We can get started. So if all the panelists want to go ahead and introduce themselves.
Sure, I'll start. Hi, everyone. Thank you guys thank you everyone for coming, and hopefully, some people will start filling in as we start to speak. But it's a pleasure to be here, and I hope this hour-long session will help you guys get a little better understanding of the VC industry, and maybe how to kind of break through that. And I know we have Rahul here who has his book behind him, who definitely has some great insight as well. But I'll start off, sure. So I'm Josh. I'm currently a junior, technically a first semester senior. I'm graduating next January. Studying finance. I have no minor. First, I'll give you a little bit of background of how I started to get into VC. My freshman year, I really thought I was going to go to Goldman Sachs, get into investment banking, and that's it. And that was going to be the end of me, kind of. And much to my surprise, my freshman year, I was able to get an internship at Booz Allen Hamilton, which is a government consulting firm. They're based out of DC, and they work a lot with the government. Particularly, I worked with the consulting side. So I really got to work with the founders and startups of many of the companies that they work with. So that really opened the doors really to kind of things that are in finance that aren't investment banking. So within that, a year later, my sophomore year, I was able to get an internship at Foundation Venture Capital Group, where Lorenz is able to join me there. So yeah, I've been working there for the last 1.5 years as a venture associate, and hopefully planning on working there coming out of college, or eventually thinking of other opportunities just like you guys. So I'm looking forward to meeting you all and, answering any questions you guys may have. Thank you.
All right, I can go next. So I'm pretty new to working in the VC space, but I'm not that new to working internships. So it's kind of similar to Joshua, freshman year. People were like, oh, you don't really need, I wanted to do like banking like every other freshman, and I was like, oh, if I want to do banking, I have to get an internship, right? And then the kids I talked to on Wall Street, the junior, they were like, no, you don't even need an internship. But like that didn't really sell it for me. So I was like, I'm gonna get an internship, right? So I did some networking. I think I reached out to like 55 different search fund founders. And eventually got one on the phone. I got a couple of them on the phone. I got one to actually like give me an internship. So I worked remotely at a small search fund that was based in Arizona, but actually obviously worked from New Jersey. So it's kind of cool. I was the first Rutgers intern there out of the 5 interns. And then when I left, it was all Rutgers interns. So kind of converted them to the Rutgers side. But at the same time, I worked for Note, which is a Rutgers educational tech startup that I know a couple of other people on the call have worked for. And I'm currently also working at a distressed real estate acquisition firm, which is Cooper Square Acquisitions. We're located in South Jersey. And very, very recently, I've been starting to work with Joshua at Foundation Venture Capital Group. I can't lie, he kind of hooks it up. Like just through the real estate club, we became connected. We started talking, and he was just like, "Hey, there's an opportunity." And I've never said no to an opportunity, internship wise. And obviously, I took it, not really knowing what to expect, having no experience in venture, little experience in the startup world, and a little experience in the private equity world. But venture was like very new to me. But I went with it. I talked to the VP, amazing guy. And then yeah, they gave me the offer, and I was like, say less, and I took it. And I've been working there for I'd say like a month now, and it's been amazing. What I'm kind of doing is like industry analysis, like market analysis. So as Joshua knows, we have a lot of different portfolio companies that we work with, and the newer ones, they always like need something new. Like, do we need to find a product market fit for this new product that's come to market, or like what phase of getting patents and stuff like that are they in, and what can I do to help out there? So I'm on some of the calls with the CEOs of the companies and seeing how they talk to the venture side. So it's a lot of learning, and I'm really thankful obviously to Josh for hooking it up.
All right, I'll go next. So I dabbled in both the VC world and both the banking world. So to give the rundown, I guess, similar to these guys, freshman year, I joined this club. I was like, what the hell is venture capital? I just know that all these startups like Facebook, Airbnb, Uber all had to come from somewhere, right? And that's from venture capital. So I decided that I wanted to get an internship in the space, and I kind of grinded for it, and I ended up finding one in Montclair, New Jersey at a small seed fund called Soundboard Venture Fund. And then from there, I did a couple banking internships. I worked at Wells Fargo my sophomore year. My junior year coming up, I'm going to Deutsche Bank. But during that time, and I'm still working there now, I decided to go on the other side and really work at startups. So right now, I'm currently working at EasyKnock, which is a real estate startup that provides liquidity solutions to people who don't have the best credit scores at the end of the day. So it's using your house to unlock equity so that you can pay for emergencies, maybe start your own business, or just have that cash on hand at the end of the day. And there are a lot of different products that we sell. And we just raised for a Series B around the last summer, I would say, with QED Investors and Viola FinTech, which are pretty good venture capital firms as well. And yeah, that's me.
Awesome. I'll go last. So, hey everyone, I'm Rahul, sophomore studying finance and astrophysics, and basically, like I guess everyone else thought I wanted to do banking early on, sort of freshman year, but I was like, all right, like it's probably not for me, and I really wanted something more dynamic, something more fulfilling at the end of the day, something to make me happy. So, basically, my entire life, my dad has worked at this one research lab, so just I had all this influence in terms of science and tech and whatnot, right? Deep tech at the end of the day. So, I wanted to sort of combine my strengths and sort of my interest in finance also with science and tech and already really sort of R&D heavy sort of company and things like that. And those are actually that are doing some good in the world and stuff. So became super obsessed with this really niche sort of part of VC, right? Deep tech VC. And honestly, I was like, all right, I have all this energy, all this passion, let me do something with it. So I was like, all right, let me write a book. So, decided to write this book, January 2020. So about a year ago, just published 2 months ago and stuff. So it was really cool process, learned a ton, got all these connections in sort of, Silicon Valley and whatnot. And in terms of work history, I worked at 2 different startups, worked at 2 different sort of VC firms, but mostly in content creation roles. But then my first real sort of VC thing was what I'm currently at right now. It's at Lux Capital. It's a $2.5 billion AUM VC firm in New York and California. And they do all the, the coolest sort of, sci-fi sounding sort of companies, right? Everything from, space to the oceans to, brain computer interfaces and stuff like that. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those introductions. So now we will open it up to questions from the audience. So yeah, I'll give you a minute or so to start having these questions come in. And if there are none, we have a whole list of stuff to talk about.
I would rather listen to the audience questions than the e-board's questions, because the e-board questions are boring.
Yeah, we want to hear from you.
So I'm really curious about what you guys were mentioning earlier. So I guess given that everyone started off as more so towards investment banking, and I guess the common theme is that venture capital is a lot more fulfilling. Could you expand upon that or talk more about that?
I can kind of start off with this because I do this rant all the time. I feel like when a lot of people go into college and they're really ambitious, like, oh, I want to do investment banking. Why do I want to do that? Because I think I'm going to make $94,000 coming out of college, right? That's ambitious. But as I was kind of working towards that, I realized there's a lot of kind of definite strings attached to that, right? People tell you you're going to be working 100 hours a week, but do you actually know what 100 hours a week is like? Are you willing to give up your Saturdays and your Sundays to work for 2 straight years before you lateral into private equity or something like that? There's a lot of sacrifices you're gonna have to do. And during that time, you're pretty much gonna be working for someone else. Someone's gonna have their heel on your back, on your head every single day. There's gonna be you, then there's an associate, and there's a VP, there's a managing director, and everyone just everything goes down to you. You're the very bottom of the barrel. They're gonna put their stuff they need to do on you, and you don't have a say against it. You can try to tell your staffer that you don't have time, but they're you're doing the assignment or whatever. So I mean, at the end of the day, I just realized that's not what I want to do. I want to kind of build my own thing. I want to start my own company. I don't want to work 100 hours a week making someone else rich when I can try to either make myself rich or go broke trying, right? So it just wasn't that much of I just when I really thought about it over and over, and I talked to people in investment banking, I realized that maybe at the end of the day, there's better things out there.
Yeah, that's a great question, and Lorenz had a really great point and answer to that, and that's kind of very similar to my thought process. And I'd assume, you know, the two others here, as well as the many others who kind of went through the similar process. But you are right. You know, it does take a big sacrifice, and investment banking kind of entry level roles in the beginning, you know, they say 2 to 5 years. But it also, you got to think about the innovators or the kind of inventors as well, or these entrepreneurs. Their life balance or their health, work-life balance isn't maybe the best or most healthy right away. But that's what the point of being a founder or working with founders is you really kind of find problems or find issues in the world, and you think about, you question it. At least growing up, like Rahul mentioned, you know, growing up, he had a family who worked in the labs. My dad actually worked or developed some technology and sold it to Fitbit. So he kind of helped the ball rolling within the health industry and building it up with the technology. So that kind of really spurred something in me that I really didn't have prior. And it was really that idea of question things. Like if obesity is a big problem, question that. It shouldn't be. You know, let's find a solution for that and work with that. And that's kind of the different, maybe not the difference between just IB and VC, but it's that big difference between the VC mindset and the entrepreneurial startup mindset versus kind of many other sectors within finance or even in business. And I really think that kind of thought of, you know, let's look at problems, let's find solutions, and let's get it out there and help the world. And that's kind of the mentality I had getting into this. And really the founders I've worked with have a very similar mentality. This is a problem. I know you guys are going to like this solution. I'm going to sell it to you guys. And that's kind of that really work-life kind of balance I really love.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree 100% with that. Like for me, it was sort of like, all right, like what's like my life's goal, right? My life's goal is like honestly at the end of the day to like, you know, build the future, right? And who are the people that are actually like, you know, building the future, right? The things that we actually need, right? Solving all these, you know, world problems or whatever it may be. Like those are founders, right? Like it's no one else. Like those are founders. And it's sort of like, all right, like how could sort of, you know, if that's like my life's goal, right, to solve all these problems, like to do, you know, just do some good in the world, right? Like I just thought that VC was just this awesome sort of opportunity in which I could, you know, use my finance skills, right, use all those, you know, the business side of things, but then also, yeah, get in touch with, you know, like what I sort of grew up on, right, science and tech, and the people who are actually, you know, building the future and sort of, you know, doing all that stuff. So like for me, it was just sort of like I realized like, all right, like VCs like most aligns with sort of, you know, my life's sort of, you know, purpose or goal or whatever it may be. And so that's why, you know, I had all this energy to sort of pursue it and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, and just kind of reiterating what everybody has been saying, but taking a little bit more of a neutral stance. You have to realize that every different field within business and finance will provide a different element that is fulfilling to X person, right? And at the end of the day, the skills that you learn in investment banking or equity research or private banking field will help you in the fields of private equity and venture capital and so on, right? So maybe looking at your future, you'll realize that maybe I should take these 2 years to build up a hard skill set so that I can transfer it into some of these more ambiguous roles in venture capital and private equity. Or maybe you'll realize that I don't give a shit about any of that crap and I want to go straight into VC and be a startup founder or be an investor at the end of the day. So I feel like it's just a subjective thing, and you should not be on this call and think that VC is better than anything else, but VC provides a different, unique element that some parts of finance will not provide.
Also, I do want to add, like Haanee's 100% right. Like we were always talking about, you know, IB's, you know, 100-hour work weeks or whatever. VC is just as much. Like don't get it twisted. Like it's not some like, you know, easier route to you know, build awesome startups or whatever. Like no, like it is a grind. It's even more exclusive than, you know, IB and sort of, you know, that whole industry as well. It's tough to get into for a reason, because at the end of the day, like firms don't need, you know, entire, you know, 10, 15, you know, person sort of analyst class or whatever, right? They just need like, you know, one or two, maybe a few associates, and then all the partners do most of, you know, the decision making. So by no means is it easy. In fact, people go to banking to get into VC. So again, like I would say, yeah, definitely like Haanee said, it's not, one is not better than the other. It's rather just like, you know, what sort of aligns best with your, you know, your personal ambitions and you know, your life's goals and whatever makes you happy. So yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Thanks, everyone. Zach, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. I think Robert was in the chat before me. I don't know if Robert wants to unmute.
I think Jess also had a question right before Robert. So just go in the order if you feel like talking out loud. Otherwise, I can say.
I guess I'm unmuted, so I'm talking anyway. What were your internships like at the VC firms, and was that different than you expected? Were you expecting to do more or less? What was that like?
Okay, so I guess I'll start because I'm unmuted right now. So as a freshman, I really came in not having a great idea of how to qualitatively and quantitatively value companies, right? But once getting this internship, they kind of were under the impression that I should be able to do the bare bones, which I didn't feel like I was able to do at that time. So being put right into the middle of everything. So in VC, it's not necessarily like the usual types of quantitative analysis that you would do on a stock, for example, like looking at income statements and balance sheets and understanding how you stack up against competitors from all the quantitative parts, right? Because you're dealing with companies that are in their early seed stages for the most part. And sometimes they have pretty shitty financials or they don't even have financials half the time. So you kind of have to use a qualitative mindset when you're looking at a VC, at a startup at the end of the day. So looking at qualitative factors such as the management team, what's the background of these people, understanding the perseverance and the grit that they've gone through to get to the point that they are right now. And then looking at things like the addressable market that they're trying to capture. How are they capturing it? Are they doing it better than other people in the field? So that's kind of what you can expect from a VC internship in terms of the interesting work, right? But then you have a whole load of BS work that will come, like maybe sourcing for deals here and there, or going to all these startup conferences and trying to get funding together, trying to get people together that you feel like you could invest in at the end of the day. So it's a lot of, it's just as much a relationship business as it is like a regular finance business of valuing things, right?
All right, I guess I'll go next. So in terms of what's my internship like? So yeah, no, it's a dream come true for me. I absolutely love what I'm doing. Basically, it's a combination of due diligence, right? Tons of market research and really sort of deep technical research as well. Tons of sourcing, whatever, making connections. At the end of the day, like what a college can add to be like in terms of like being a value add to VC firms is just having a solid network of founders, right, and a solid network of talent and whatever may be. That again, that's one of the reasons why Stanford is Stanford, and we're not and Rutgers is not considered one of the target schools in terms of founders and companies and talent and stuff. So again, if you want to sort of get into VC and stuff and everything, and I mentioned this because I'm seeing it firsthand, like getting that network of founders, right, getting the network of talent or wherever it may be, that is single-handedly the most important thing to getting an internship or getting like a full-time in the VC world. So that's one thing I'm doing at the moment, right? Just building a solid sort of network of people, right? PhD people, future founders, people who I think have a company in them, but maybe they're not ready at the moment. Just establishing connections with them, like saying like, hey, like how can I be helpful, and doing all that. So honestly, the combination of those sort of 3-4 things is basically most of my time. Also done some cool things as well. So like my VC firm, for example, they just recently launched a SPAC. So like that was like one of the coolest things ever. I'm starting to see them actually launch this sort of thing. I've done a lot of not a lot of, like I've done some sort of M&A stuff. So I've set up sort of calls with big time companies, right? For example, like recently I was on a call with a major hospital network, connecting them with our portfolio companies, so maybe they can acquire them, and doing sort of business development and stuff like that. So I would say honestly, like the best sort of thing to do in terms of being value add and stuff like that, it's like being having all the skills in terms of actually how to operate a startup. If you can do that plus have like a solid network, like that's like really like beneficial for firms. So yeah.
Yeah, so those are both great responses. Honestly, there's not really too much for me to add there, and I feel like Lorenz probably has very similar because we do work for the same company. But yeah, I'd be happy to take another question. So I'm looking in the chat, and there's one from Robert. So I'll answer that one, and it goes about, do you have any advice or guidance for a transfer, like a junior yourself, student new to Rutgers and RBS resources? So Yeah, that's a great question. And that's the biggest question I had going into school, even before going to school. And my best advice still remains the same. And it's just reach out and connections. It's like what Rahul said, like everyone really says, it's who you know and how you can kind of help them and help each other mutually. It really is a symbiotic relationship. And if you're able to kind of use your connections, whether it's, at a personal level, at your home, in your hometown, or at your school, whether it's your professors or clubs, there's many routes you can go. First, I'll recommend LinkedIn. That's a very easy, open, source platform. Obviously, I'm sure you're aware of it. The biggest thing I did on LinkedIn is before even coming to Rutgers is I probably, if I could share my screen, I probably went through 5,000 to 6,000 messages since my junior year of high school till now of reaching out for what school should I go to, what book should I read, how to contact someone, what's like, just so many different questions that I don't know. And it's normal to not know. And I want you guys, everyone here tonight, like it's normal to not know. And especially in VC, you probably spend a lot of your time not knowing like what the task is, what the job is, what the company is, what they're selling. You won't. So it's really kind of working with this and figuring out how best can you turn something or nothing into something, or how best can you work with each other to make something happen. So that's my biggest advice on kind of reaching out on LinkedIn. But thinking more of like advice and guidance, again, it is kind of who you know. One of the biggest advice is feel free to reach out to me separately, Robert, or any of you guys. I could, certainly pass along some connections or help you as best as I can. But there's a lot of resources online that you could find for VC. So, Rahul's very into Twitter, and I've kind of started to just get into that. But Twitter is a very great place. Oh, perfect. All right. So Rahul's link, so his blog post that he actually has that he shared with me is actually full of just actual information that you'd want to know. So I think, my best advice is just click on that link and start looking at those things. But really, articles on Notion, VC, Twitters, there's a lot of just different blogs. Most of the, Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z, Fred Wilson from Union Square Ventures. There's many VCs who kind of have blogs and explain, what they're doing every day, what metrics they're looking at, how to break into it. So they're even giving advice because they know how hard it is. So yeah, again, just look at all these the blesses that Rahul is going to give you guys, and I'll leave it to other people to answer the rest of the questions.
Yeah. So Jess asked a question earlier. The first one, she's the first one actually said, what was your favorite or least favorite part of your internship? So I'm gonna answer this one, but I have to dip, not because I don't like you guys, but I have a class at like 7:30. So obviously I'm pretty new to foundation, but I think I've touched on this already. But my favorite part is like it's such a nurturing environment. Like I've worked with like at least like 4 internships now, and this one by far has been like the most like helpful, like in the sense of like they're not gonna like expect you to know everything. I knew nothing. I thought I have to like kind of lie and like pretend I knew stuff, but I didn't even have to do that. So like they said like we'll walk you through everything. They're really helpful. They offered like this is literally a VP of a relatively small VC firm like offering to like you take up an hour out of his calendar and like walk with me through like these like term sheets, these different like how to like structure like the what is it, how like the processes work for what are they called, for like those like the loans, and no, not the loans, the IP, like intellectual property, all that different stuff. So the it's really awesome. Like I get to like talk to the associates, like 2 of them once every week, and they're really helpful. And today I had a call with one of them who's like telling me about how during his PhD at Dartmouth he used to be like cutting up like rats and stuff to like do experiments, and just like with such a casual conversation with such like intelligent guy. So I just like love the environment, and I've been having a good time. Least favorite part, can't really say there's been anything bad so far. If there was, I'd tell you guys. But
Watch what you say.
yeah, I know Josh is gonna snitch me out, but no, I mean I just started it. It's been all good. Time's good. I mean, let me work on the weekends when I have more time. So literally no complaints. It's really been a good experience.
Yeah, and I'd like to throw something in there real quick. So kind of for the positives, one of the biggest things that I forgot to mention, I actually have it in my notes here, is one of the things I wanted to stress to you guys in particular, and whether it's comparing IB and VC or any other job in the VC industry, is really that the thing I found so great and just so comforting, like Lorenz said about this kind of industry, is that we're all kind of new. And we're all kind of just deciding or figuring out what's going on because we're working with new products, we're working with new issues, and literally building new solutions. So everything is kind of like a gray area per se. And there's no real fact for, where you should go, what you have to do. There's obviously guidelines and specific regulations that you have to follow, but those are kind of just rules. So with that being said, you get people from all different majors at your school in these clubs or in these kind of companies, but you also get people from all different walks of life, whether it's London, big financial hub, or, Tel Aviv in Israel, which is also very huge, Africa, which is starting to come up now. Like, this is really a great atmosphere. And it's really not just, coming from one country, coming from one race, coming from one, anything. So it's really just accumulation of a lot of great things. And the other question was, what's a negative? So it's not really a negative per se, but it is a very questionable thing. It's hard. It's something I'm struggling with now and I'm trying to learn. And you don't really get full on tasks, or you could get tasks, but a lot of the tasks are vague. It's, we want to do this, or we want to go into, let's say the hospitals, for instance. So I'm working with a company called Novapedics, which is a meniscus implant. I mean, they're like, hey, we want to get to hospitals. I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. But like, what do you do? When you get told that, you're like, you sit down, your boss isn't there. You're like, how am I supposed to do this? And it really starts by, taking everything step by step. And it's asking questions, asking my dad, asking, a club member, asking a professor, asking Rahul, just asking anybody. And it's really just figuring out as you take it. But in all honesty, there's not really a negative that I've had so far for my, only 1.5 years there. But I really think as of right now, that probably is the most difficult per se, if that helps.
I'd definitely add, like, in terms of negatives, one thing that kind of sucks is that VC is incredibly uncertain. So like what I mean by uncertain is, like, you getting, first of all, you getting hired by no means is that certain. It's probably, again, it's one of the hardest industries to break into. So that's one thing. But also, getting promoted and stuff, are actually doing well in VC, it's extremely tough. Again, like, it is another asset class that you're investing into. I forgot the exact statistic, but it was found that around, I think 20% of, so around 80% of VCs perform worse than the S&P 500, right? So you're probably going to fail, to be honest, and it's extremely tough to sort of have to return portfolio, let alone get multiple sort of multiple X sort of return on it. So that's like one thing I would say, like, in terms of what's negative about VC is that it's tough. It's not easy whatsoever, and a lot of people try, a lot of people fail. So again, it honestly goes back to Haanee's point originally, just like, maybe going the banking route to get some skills in that to actually be helpful long term, or even going to startup route, actually getting operational experience and then going into VC, so you do know how to operate startups, you do know how to help your portfolio companies, and then in turn, hopefully they sort of return your portfolio. So yeah, I would say that's probably like the biggest sort of negative about it. So yeah.
Yeah, and kind of shifting back to positives a little bit. At the end of the day, right, you're investing into startup companies that you hope become unicorns and become the next big thing, right? So watching that process happen is really beautiful at the end of the day, to be honest, right? So to give an example, I guess, for the firm that I worked at freshman year, one of the companies we invested in was Social Bicycles, right? So you know how at Rutgers we have those scooters that are running around right now, all that. So it's basically one of those companies. And just going through the process of seeing how they ended up eventually getting acquired by Uber was just great to see, right? Like, to see the due diligence that I put into it, the scenario analysis that I put into seeing what would happen if X happened, or if it went a bad route or a good route or investment, right? Just kind of seeing how all of it played out, and then having this unexpected outcome on top of it is the uncertainty that Rahul was talking about. But sometimes that uncertainty is good, and sometimes that uncertainty can be bad. And kind of listening to everybody else's questions right now, a lot of people are asking for advice to apply to internships, what skill sets they should have, how they can adjust to Rutgers in terms of finding internships and advice and stuff like that. So if anybody wants to start off with that.
Yeah, of course. So all right, so what was it? It was skill sets and how to use Rutgers to your advantage. All right, so all right, skill sets. So this, like I was mentioning before, like, yeah, like having some sort of like a solid network of people, because again, VCs love that because they want they want to see as many possible companies and And so like, if you maybe you're I don't know, a part of some sort of organization, or a part of some sort of geography, and you're in touch with all the founders there, right? Maybe that whole scene. Like that's like something you could actually add to a VC firm, and they'd love to sort of tap into your network. So that's like one thing, having that. In terms of skill sets, so yeah, like I was saying before, either having startup skills, again, just like general hustling, having domain specific knowledge maybe in a certain field, right? Whether it's everything from, I don't know, physics or biology to even creators, right, and content creators and things like that. Like there's so many sort of niches that you could become an expert on, and sort of becoming some sort of like a semi-expert, like that would be amazing. In terms of VCs would love that, right? If you do have some sort of special knowledge that others don't. So that's one thing, right? Developing a niche, developing a network, and then at the end of the day, in terms of actually hard skills, it is a lot. Like at the end of the day, like you're getting paid to teach yourself everything, right? And sort of to adapt and stuff, and so you have to teach yourself a lot of things. You have to be sort of agile, if that makes sense, and sort of pivot like really well. You have to be good at like doing research and stuff. Boiling down really technical sort of things into 1 page or 2 page sort of report, things like that, right? Having all those analytical skills. But yeah, I would say like those, just having those in general are usually pretty helpful in terms of being a good VC. What was the other one? Oh, how to use a Rutgers. So actually, I don't know if I'm the best to answer this question, because I actually nothing from Rutgers actually really helped me. It was me sort of making my way into the West Coast, right, into New York City and those sort of tech scenes and stuff. So I actually would recommend that, like like join organizations, right, clubs and fellowships or whatever, or just try to make your way into other sort of entrepreneurial hubs, and then you're more likely to meet more VCs and get hired, or just again meet the founders or whatever it may be. I would definitely recommend that. But Rutgers is definitely improving. I'll say that. So right, like join RSVP, for example. That's a really cool organization that doing some good stuff, and like trying to build like a startup scene here. Definitely there's a few of us. There's not too many, but there's a few of us who are actually really interested in startups and VC and stuff like that. So find those people, right? Again, you all are in this club, so that you're already in the right track. But again, I would say meeting the right people and sort of join RSVP / other sort of domain specific clubs, and you could do a lot with sort of having that knowledge in whatever field. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great advice. And really to that point of kind of Rutgers and the whole, like, where do we stand within getting, targeted or even kind of looked at? And Rahul said, maybe you don't want to ask him for his advice, and maybe you don't want to ask me, or maybe this is the right answer. You look other places. And, to be quite honest, when I first came to Rutgers, I was like, okay, there's many reasons why I came here. And one of them being connections, knowing it's so close to New York, knowing that not that it's that close to California, but I could go to California, I guess, since I'm not outside of the US. But anyway, so it's really kind of location, connections, price, many of these things. But when you ask kind of what skill sets do you think you should have to get into VC? That's a genuine question. I ask that all the time, but there's no real answer for that, because it's like Rahul said, it's building connections, it's our network, it's building, developing kind of your niche. And that's the key, I think, is really the niche. So Rahul has his in deep tech. I'm still trying to find mine. So if someone could find mine for me, like, let me know. But yeah, so it's really kind of, it's you are teaching yourself, and you are kind of getting paid to learn the ropes about a company that you're, advising and investing in. So you're really going to learn everything about their business and their market, their actual total market, to help them do their own business kind of thing. So it is a very interesting kind of dynamic. So if you can master specific industries, whether it's deep tech, AI, there's so many different kind of industries or actual sectors that you could really look at. And if you could get those connections, whether it's 5 or 20 connections within that one field, you can kind of almost master or be an expert in that field, in which you have all the skills you need to build your connections even more. People are going to go to you, whether it's for investment reasons, partnership reasons, M&A, kind of what you do your job for. So it really is, at the end of the day, becoming an expert at many different fields, and that's kind of what the job is. It's a weird title, but that's what it is, and that's kind of what I've been trying to learn as we speak. So that's kind of what I feel. And again, yeah, skill sets. One of the things I would like to mention, and I have it actually written down here, is there's not too many metrics, actually. So, financially speaking, which we've spoken about kind of maybe 30 minutes ago, is about, we do focus on quantitative, but we do have to focus on actual qualitative. Like, this number is 5. What does 5 mean? Is it 5 million, 5 billion? Is 5 a low number, a high number? Like, it could go either way. So that's very important. But building the financial metrics of, DAU, daily active users, monthly active users, the run rate, the churn rates, all these different kind of rates are I'm just spitting them out right now. And, I could definitely tell you guys about each one of them. But just even those links that Rahul sent, or ones that I'm sure we'll follow up with on our, next email for thanking you for coming, there are many places where you could find those metrics, and they don't change too much. There's different industries. So there's SaaS, which is software as a service. But there's different there's different industries, and each industry kind of has their own specific metrics they look at. Subscription, they focus on churn, how many people subscribe, how many people leave. They don't do that for kind of retail. So those are kind of just examples of different skill sets per se, depending on the industry, sector, and kind of whatnot. So hopefully that helped as well.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit extra, I don't think that there is one particular skill set that you need to succeed in VC. I think it boils down to one thing, and that's your interest, right? So like both of them were saying before, finding that niche. If you're interested in something, you will do whatever it takes to learn everything about that, right? Like if you want to play a video game and beat that video game, you're going to beat the video game to its entirety. So think of finding that industry or finding that startup as your video game, and you go through it in its entirety, understand it, dissect it, and then you do that for the next thing and for the next thing, and you keep on doing that. And that's what VC is, right? So I don't think you have to be the smartest person in the world to be in VC. I just think you have to be the most driven person in the world to succeed in VC, right? So just think of it as the amount of perseverance you have, and that could be your soft skill that will take you far in VC, right? And everybody on this call right now, I don't want you to sell yourself short because you're from Rutgers. It doesn't matter. It's literally zero matter, right? Whether you're talking about banking roles, like banks only look at IVs and target schools, fuck that, all right? Whether it's VC roles, that doesn't matter, right? It's about what you bring to the table, and you have to keep on going further from that.
Yes, that's a good
So
point.
I had a question as well. Oh, sorry.
You go.
All right. So my question was more about how does VC differ from like private equity in terms of your relationship with the business, as well as what it looks like from a lower level job description. However well you guys can speak to that would be great. Yeah, I could answer that. Honestly, VC and private equity, they're super similar in that VC is just early stage private equity, right? So basically like how it goes is like everything, right? Like pre-seed, seed, series A, and maybe sort of, series B is probably like the VC realm, and then private equity is sort of, series C and, later. So if you want to think about just like the stage of the company, like that's just like how to do it at a very like high level. Obviously there's, a bunch of other sort of, qualities, like for example, like early stages, right? Like when you're, even like, pre-revenue, right? You just have like an idea, like a, few people on the team. Like the most important things are most of the qualitative things are most important, right? But then when you go to like the private equity sort of side, right, the later stage, right, series, C, D, E, and so forth, like that's when like the financial sort of metrics are most important, right? And by then you should probably have a solid culture, right, and solid sort of chain of command or whatever it may be, right? All the internal operations are sort of more sort of solidified and stuff. So it is, again, you're looking for different things, but at the end of the day, it's just early versus late stage at a higher level at least. So yeah.
Yeah, and to really make it even simpler, private equity is boring, VC is interesting. I mean, private equity, you're dealing with companies like Rahul said in their later stages. So these companies have pretty much already established themselves as big dogs and are just waiting to go into the IPO route. Or it's the other way around. There are companies that are already public on the market and they haven't succeeded. So there's an LBO, so leveraged buyout, in order for that company to become private again. So that's essentially what private equity is. And there's no structure to VC at all. It could be seed to Series A. It could even be Series C for some companies. It doesn't really matter, right? So for VC, I would say it's more of an unstructured way to grow companies, and private equity is just that last little hoop that these companies need to go over and then make it to the finish line, which is eventually the public market.
Yeah. Also, like I could add like VC, like that's really where like when people say like cutting edge, like that's what VC is, right? Like you're actually doing like, what's like, super, nascent, right? Like what's like the most advanced or frontier sort of thing in whatever industry, right? And so honestly, that's why I love it, right? Like like it's like literally like the cutting edge of like whatever you're working in. So, as opposed to more sort of, established companies, right? More established markets and so forth for private equity. So again, it's just whatever works to your interests and so your whatever you want to work in specifically. So yeah.
All right, so I got a question personally. I was just gonna read it out loud. What are some daily habits a VC intern can do to be helpful to the team? Anybody want to start?
Sure, I'll kind of jump in there. So that's a good question. It's actually kind of funny because sometimes I'll be working, and with this whole online and remote. I mean, I'm in my at school right now, but like I don't have a boss who's looking at me. He doesn't know what I'm doing all the time, obviously. So it's like, how do I prove to him I'm working? Like that sounds silly, but sometimes I'm like, I don't know if that's right. So one thing that I would suggest is, like I mentioned, kind of Twitter and all these places to find information about VC. You could not only learn about VC there, but there's kind of a more important side, which is really talking within VC there. So when you're in Twitter, or on Twitter, and you follow some of these VC people, you could really get to see what's going on in any industry, whether it's deep tech, whether it's, you're looking at AI, whether you're looking in Africa or the US or anywhere really. So that's kind of the awesome thing about kind of this space, in that you find anything interesting or anything that corresponds to one of the portfolio companies, you could send it to your boss. You could send it to the team and say, hey, I mean, I don't think I have well, actually, I'll give an example. So there's actually a startup from Rutgers students, Vedant Mehta, called Finals Club. And what it is it's a group messaging app. And right now it's slowly transitioning into a productivity tool. So if you go on the website, it's finalsclub.io. And what it is it allows you to make rooms. And in each room, you can, host a private session or actually meet with people in your class and talk. So one of the things, I know I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but it is a Rutgers startup and is one that we invested in. So I did want to bring it up. But the coolest thing kind of along those lines about like being able to provide more information or help your boss and really value add is by sending them videos or kind of links to GroupMe, who opened up that messaging app maybe a couple months ago for Rutgers classes or any class at school. Getting notifications about, Slack making an update or GroupMe, some small updates, that can add competition or change the competition or change the dynamic of their value or their kind of competitive advantage. These are important things that we need to know because it's our investment, it's our we're mutually coming together for a company. So it's kind of our goal to know all this information. So, it was a long story, but my best word of advice is really kind of find cool information, whether it's related to portfolio companies or future, and really pass that along because, information, it doesn't do any good just sitting there. So you got to keep kind of working with it.
Yeah, okay. So I'm not currently working in VC right now. I'm working at a startup, like I said in the beginning. So let's take this question, say daily habits that somebody who wants to work in VC or who wants to keep up with VC should do. And I think that boils down to reading, right? So reading newsletters, I'll drop a few in the chat after I'm done answering. And Rahul probably has like 5 more, 10 more that I don't know about. So reading newsletters, reading books, there's literally like Bibles in VC that you can read all over. Then I think it really boils down to keeping up with that niche that you're really interested in. Like, so for Rahul, it's deep tech. For me, it's real estate. Josh is finding his niche, so he's keeping up with everything probably.
Man, right now I'm going crazy.
So I think the number one thing that you can bring to the table when you're interviewing for a VC, or if you want to keep up with VC and eventually break into VC, is reading and keeping up with everything VC. So reading about the firms that you want to work at. So if they're the big Sequoia Capitals or if they're the smaller ones like Soundboard Venture Fund, the one I worked at. So keeping up with what these firms are doing on their blogs, on their website, looking at their investments, and just digging deeper. I think it really comes down to your research and reading.
Do we have any more questions? If not, we can get started with the list of questions that the e-board has made. You know, it's probably only going to be a couple since we're nearing 8 p.m., but let's just pick a couple. So, okay, this is a good question. How can non-business majors integrate themselves within venture capital? Is it difficult for people with a technical background, for example, engineering majors, to enter the field?
I think I could answer this really, really well. So I'm in deep tech, right? I absolutely love deep tech. I'm like, all right, what deep tech is, right? It's just it's a sort of this umbrella term for any sort of, you know, frontier tech or advanced tech, right? So it's not really an industry, right? It's multiple industries, right? It's everything from AI to biotech to whatever. I'm a finance major. Like I don't, you know, I don't know all this stuff, but like, I'll tell you one thing, like I would actually say what's more valuable for VCs is being technical, to be completely honest, and I'm not technical, so I did have sort of like an uphill battle to do that. There's enough finance people sort of, you know, in VC. They don't need more of that. They need more, you know, technical people, right? People who know how to code, right? For example, right? Like if you know CS or whatever, then you could actually, you know, if you're, I mean, like most tech companies, you know, have some sort of software integrated into it. So like those are people who actually, you know, understand that product at hand, right? Or if you have, I don't know, biomedical engineering experience, right? Or you're sort of, you know, in the bio world, like then you have domain specific knowledge for all those investments and stuff. So I would say like technical people and sort of engineers and stuff like that, they're actually probably more needed, to be honest, than the pure finance people. But at the end of the day, like don't let that deter you if you are finance or if you are technical. Just like everyone is needed in some sort of capacity. So it's just a matter of, you know, how could you use your skills to, you know, sort of, you know, solve whatever a VC firm needs. Again, there's VC firms strictly for, you know, for example, like for only apps, right? Or who would do only, you know, software things, right? There's VCs who do only, you know, biotech, right? There's VCs who do, you know, only US or only Africa or only Israel, right? So there's a VC firm for every sort of geography, industry, you know, field, whatever it may be. Just find whatever works best for you, and I'm sure there's something out there. So you don't need to be one or the other, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, so like Rahul said, I think you're definitely at a unique advantage if you are a non-finance major, in the sense that you have something unique to bring to the table for a specific industry that you might have specialized in, whether it be the sciences, the maths, the computer sciences, and things like that. So that's definitely like, because in those fields, you're not really aware of venture capital as an exit opportunity for you, because you're not taught that. You're taught that in finance because it's part of the hierarchy of finance, right? So, but even if you are a finance major, which I know a lot of you probably are on this call, there is definitely space for you. And like I said before, reading is what will set you apart, because you're going to know a lot of different things that you can bring to the table in terms of your contributions and the mindset that you have.
Yeah,
Josh, do you have
they
anything
really
to
covered
add?
it.
Or?
Oh, no, you go. Rahul.
All right, cool. So, all right.
I have a question that's from the list. I
Okay,
think
sure.
that'd be helpful. Sorry. Yeah, would you be able to talk a bit about how you network, how you reach out to people, and how you keep up the connection with them over time?
Yeah, sure. So I'll kind of start. It all really started my junior year of high school. So I thought it'd kind of be like a reach out, and then I don't need to, you know, I got my information. I don't need to hear from them again, and I'd be fine. But I kind of got myself in a start of something that I didn't realize how powerful it really is. And I've kind of been with that since. So at first I was kind of upset that I did it, but I'm happy I actually pursued it. But yeah, it is kind of to that point. So I always start off kind of with an introduction, whether I know them or not. It's more of like a, hey, you know, this is me. I'm from, you know, junior at Rutgers, kind of like an elevator pitch in a way. you explain kind of what you've done or what, you're doing in the club, and then you express kind of your interest or what you want. So I think that's kind of, the way I took it. And I always kind of opened it up like, hey, do you have a chance for a call, or do you have a chance for an email? And kind of just keeping up with that interaction, whether it's a phone call, they take this stuff with a lot. Like, it takes a lot of kind of pride, or just it takes a lot to even reach out to someone and ask a question, let alone setting up a Zoom link to talk, or, a phone call or an email exchange. A lot of that goes far. But the biggest thing I would say is the holidays and the small things that you reach out to that stay in contact really mean more. So it's like me reaching out to, a friend of a friend who was like, hey, I reached out to you 2 years ago. I'm still doing really well. I've been working at this VC firm, still looking for positions. Hope you had a happy holiday. And, that's the way you kind of keep the everlasting contact and communication. And that is what I found to be kind of dominant, importance and impact kind of throughout my kind of time here. And yeah, I guess by Making Moonshots by Rahul Rana. Of course, you got to buy that.
Yeah, I was going to say, Rahul, do you want to talk about your book a little bit?
It's only right.
Oh, sure. Okay. No, yeah. So I did, end up writing a book about moonshot companies, right? Deep tech and stuff. So, my book is basically, it's a deep dive into the philosophies, the mindsets, the strategies that are, really helpful for moonshot companies, right? So what's a moonshot company? It's those that, some sort of, they take some sort of deep tech or deep science sort of field. They have this sort of radical solution. They solve like a really big problem in the world. So it's basically those that are reminiscent of the Apollo missions, right? What I mean by that is those that were seemingly impossible. They're probably going to fail, but if they are successful, they change the course of science, technology, and humanity itself, right? So I just became super obsessed with this field and this sort of niche of companies, and I was like, all right, like let me write a book about it, right? I truly am passionate about it. Like I want to do something bold. Like let me write it. So yeah, that was a product of that. So yeah.
And feel free to buy it and review it on Amazon.
Yeah, it's facts. Yeah, I would love your honest reviews.
Yeah.
Always looking to improve.
So do we have any more questions from the chat? If not, we could probably throw up the suitable points now.
I do want to mention one more thing, and that kind of goes for anybody in the room, and I'm sure the panelists kind of agree. Not only thank you guys for asking your questions and allowing me to even kind of express my experience and help you guys. I'd be very happy to help in any way I can. But the biggest thing is feel free to reach out to me, or I'm assuming anyone here, but reach out to me with any questions, whether it's on Twitter, which hopefully I prefer you guys follow me on. I'm trying to do something good there. Twitter, LinkedIn, anywhere you guys find me, feel free to reach out to me. I love to help you guys. I realized my time here, it took a lot of, it was hard to get here. So I wanted to give back and help as many people as I can, and give back. So again, feel free to reach out to me with anything. I'll put on my, the ads.
Plug the Twitter, I got you.
I actually, yeah, like it's worth like noting, like Twitter is way better than LinkedIn for all things VC and startups and whatnot. Like I've met, Silicon Valley, like elite, like I literally just like DM'd one guy, right? 300K followers. He replied to one of my DMs. I interviewed him for my book. It was insane, right? Like you would never ever be able to talk to any of these people if it's not for Twitter, right? So you meet so many people. You just comment on some the people's tweets. You meet some amazing talents, amazing founders, VCs, like whatever it may be. So I don't know. I just find it so much more easier to use than LinkedIn, right? In terms of networking and stuff. So just get on Twitter. Like you'll realize what I mean when you're on it. So yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, Haanee, but I did need to say one more thing. Twitter is huge. Twitter is massive, and if you even look at some of these VCs LinkedIn's, you'll even see like I don't check LinkedIn. Look at my Twitter. Like that's literally on their bio. Yeah. Like it's a joke. It's like it's crazy, but
yeah,
that's where we're going. So also another small thing is Clubhouse. If you guys have an iPhone, hopefully they'll become an Android soon, but it is an app rolled out by Andreessen Horowitz, or helped rolled out by them. So, a VC firm, they're trying to get as many corporate and startups as they can on that app. So again, I'd recommend that as well.
Any final questions from anybody?
We got a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
really
Clubhouse.
good. We got a
Great.
lot of really good book recommendations, and like a bunch of resources from Rahul. So I think we can just make like some sort of document or something that we can put onto our social media. So make sure to follow Rutgers Venture Capital Club as well on Instagram and Twitter, and we're basically everywhere. I'll put the link down in chat so you guys can follow us. And yeah, it'll just have all the resources Rahul and the rest of you guys put in the chat. So.
Yeah, to close it out, I just want to thank the panelists so much for coming and sharing their experiences. And thank you to the audience as well. Yeah, I want to emphasize to you all that we're all really accessible. So feel free to get more involved with the club and reach out to any of the e-board members or the panelists. And we're all just trying to get to know you and build a community here. So please get involved, and there's a lot of opportunities out there.
Thank you all so much. I think this was like really enlightening for me. So thanks.
Of course, that's what it's about. It's, you come here wondering or having questions, and we're here to kind of answer them or help you in any way we can. So.
And
We're trying to put Rutgers on the map. Like, I'll tell you that.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
we need more Rutgers VCs, more Rutgers startups and everything. So yeah.
All right, and one more little plug that I just want to share with everybody.